Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 335 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about what I call the engineer mindset to leadership. And you might be wondering, what is this? I'm not an engineer. What are you talking about? Well, I'll answer those questions for you right now. Okay, sometimes I come across leaders who will ask me questions that are very specific about their teams and how to solve particular problems. Now, this is normal. Nothing going on here. That's fine. But then what I do, I come across people who they take sort of an engineering mindset to leading people. So these people might be technical specialists. They might be engineers by trade or in the software industry or in a technical profession usually. And then they've moved into a leadership role. And what they come across, their ideas come across as if everything is solvable. So if I've got this problem in my team, if I just change things and design things in a certain way, I can solve the issues like an engineer might. So an engineer, for example, let's talk about that for a second. An engineer knows that, that we need a bridge over this river. We know from previous projects that if we build it this way to these specifications, we can be very, very confident that we can develop a solution that heavy trucks and traffic can go across to get to the other side and the bridge won't break. Obviously, that's high stakes because you don't want people's lives at risk. But therefore, the engineer knows there's this perfect set of specifications they can use, they can follow, and they know exactly what's needed to develop the solution. The problem with applying this sort of concept to people and teams is that people are super complex and situations change. That's not to say that engineering is not complex, but there is lots of precedent for engineering over the years that can be used now to develop a solution to an engineering problem. And situations are changeable, right, in teams. And so building an office building or building a bridge or something like that, those are technical solutions to a problem. There are no technical solutions to people problems, I'm afraid. So sometimes leaders will come to me in this mindset and they'll ask me things like, is there a perfect balance? Like what's the balance of values or personality types I should have in my team, right? Now, that implies that there is a perfect balance, that there's an equation you can use to solve the leadership problem. Another question I sometimes get, and this was the subject of a previous podcast episode, how much empathy should I have when I'm dealing with my team? Implying that there's a perfect amount of empathy, and if we know what it is, we can get the best result from our people. Now, the problem with this mindset is that, it implies there's a perfect answer, but what we're trying to do here is put a technical solution on a complex people problem. And there is no perfect model out there that is going to solve this problem for you. So if you find yourself getting into the sort of thinking, this engineering thinking of it's a problem to be solved, in some ways it's a positive mindset because you feel like you've got agency, right? If I create the right conditions, then this problem will solve itself. But in reality, it's going to be very hard to know what that solution might be. Everything you try is going to be a result of trial and error. When things work, you can reproduce them, you can reinforce them, you can try different things if they don't work, but there's not going to be a perfect fit. And I think what engineering mindset does is it tries to simplify things to the point where we feel more comfortable and certain that if we try this thing, it'll work and we can feel good about that solution. Because engineers, and I've worked with engineers quite a lot at various organizations, they can become very frustrated when they don't have a technical solution to a problem because it's like an unsolvable issue. And so, this can lead to frustration and other emotions which aren't helpful when you're trying to lead a team. So there's no perfect model. There's no perfect equation you can use. There's only things you can try. Even things like motivation models and theories, they are generalizations put over a population of people they've used in research. They don't represent every individual person. They are general principles that apply to people, but not every person is going to fit that model. So even when you have leadership and motivation models like that, it's there's different people will respond differently to all those factors they come across as well. So what I'd encourage you to do instead of thinking like an engineer is to think like a scientist. Now, I'm not a scientist, although I do have a biochemistry degree, funnily enough, which I have not used for many years. And a scientist will have to think differently. Rather than having the perfect solution to a problem, a scientist will go, well, I think if we do this or we create these conditions, this will happen. And so then they have to, that's what's called creating a hypothesis of what they think will happen given certain conditions. So then what you want to do is you want to test that hypothesis. So your leadership really should be considered a series of testing different hypotheses to see which ones work and which ones don't. And when you try something and it doesn't have the desired effect in your team, that's not really a failure, because you are learning from that for that particular person in that situation, that wasn't a good approach, right? And so if we think more like a scientist rather than an engineer, we experience less frustration and we realize that, you know what, this is going to be a bit of trial and error. Now, over time, you will build experience and you will build a library of ideas that seem to work in most situations for you and your leadership style, because you've gained that experience by trying things and watching them fail or succeed. So this process becomes quicker once you start to realize that the way you lead works in certain ways and doesn't work in others, and therefore you have to adapt your approach less and less as you go, hopefully, as you build that experience. So think like a scientist, start to build a hypothesis of what might happen when you do a certain thing, and then test it, see what works, see what doesn't. And rather than thinking like an engineer, which implies that I have a solution that's technical and it's going to solve this people problem that I have. And thinking like an engineer also has another little problem as well, that, you know, if we're trying to solve the problem like an engineering solution, and it has a tendency to position other people as if they're broken parts of a system. So, this would all be working really well, but Bob's not doing what he's meant to be doing, right? And other people necessarily aren't broken. They are potentially just not working in the conditions you have created. So I'd encourage you once again, think about what conditions you need to create, try it out, and then see what works and see what doesn't. Because an engineering solution implies that, people, if they're not fitting into your solution, then they're not working, they're broken, and they need to be fixed. We don't need to fix people, we need to create conditions where they're likely to do better work for us. So that's what I'd encourage you to think about here. Rather than take an engineering mindset, take a scientist mindset. Use trial and error, see what works, see what doesn't, and then rinse and repeat. And that is a way to reduce frustration, but also hopefully make incremental progress in your team. I'm interested in what you think about this one. Do you do a trial and error approach? Do you try things? Do you act like a scientist? Or do you find yourself stuck in this engineering mindset, which is a common one because it helps us feel more comfortable if we have a solution to every problem? So let me know what you think in the comments on the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/335. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you could leave a positive review for this podcast, if you like it, of course. It helps me get the word out about the Thoughtful Leader podcast and helps me reach more thoughtful leaders just like you who may need a little assistance. All right, thank you for listening once again, and I'll be back next week.